Welcome to this community information session regarding the Monitor Way project. I'm Brent Todd. I'm your Ward 1 City Councilor. It's wonderful to see all of you here tonight. I want to thank the Penacook Village Association for organizing this community meeting tonight. I think we have a couple of PVA board members in the audience. If you could just raise your hands. Thank you very much for your service to the community and for organizing these ongoing listening sessions and meetings on a variety of subjects over the years. We also want to recognize a couple of folks in the audience here tonight. I see we have Mayor Champlin here for yet another Penacook meeting. Thank you very much, Mayor Champlin. That's right. There you go. We have Councilor Horn here tonight. Councilor Kretovic is here. Councilor Grady Sexton is here. Councilor Foote is here. We have Councilor McNamara here as well. Have I missed any of the councilors? I think I've got them all. We also have Representative Shurtleff here tonight. And we have Merrimack Valley School Board member Jess Wheeler-Russell here. Are there any other Merrimack Valley School members? No. Yeah, excuse me, yes, right. Not a school board member, but Representative McWilliams is here as well. Did I miss anybody? Big crowd here, so. All right, good. Thank you all. So I do want to thank the Merrimack Valley School District for allowing us to have this meeting space, as they have done for many, many years in the past. Much appreciated. It allows the community to get together in a local space to meet and have these informational sessions. Also want to thank our friends at Concord TV, who are yet again recording this event for those who can't be here, or for those who are here and want to watch it. You can watch it over and over again and again as many times as you like. So we'll be posting that information on the video link once it's ready. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our friends here from New England Family Housing and team. We have Kevin Lacasse, who will be starting things out for us and talking about the project. Kevin has said that if you have any questions along the way, just stop him and ask your questions. And we'll also be around after the end of the presentation to answer any additional questions you might have. So with that, turn it over to Kevin. Kevin.
Perfect. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody coming out and the counselors and mayor and school board officials and everybody else. I know it's a beautiful day out there and it means a lot for you guys to hear about our project. But we're very excited to be here. We've presented to the Penacook Village Association 2 other times previous to this. We've done a lot of public outreach. We've met with a lot of people. And we've gotten a lot of questions asked of us, and we've taken all of that input and we've updated our plans and we've done our best to do the research that we needed to answer all the questions. So we've got the project itself that we'll go through, which I'll start with that, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dean to go through his part of it, and then we have our engineer with us, Ed Robarge, who's going to talk about some of the traffic. And, as we said, if people have questions as we go, don't be afraid to ask those questions as we go, and then we'll be around after for any other questions as well. So you want to advance the slide? So just real quick introductions. I'm Kevin Lacasse with New England Family Housing. And there's 3 partners on the project as of right now. Dean Navaroli, who's here with us today, and he's going to say a few things. And Mike Dion, who's not able to be here with us. And then, like I said, our engineer, Ed Robarge, if we could. So here's the overall context plan. So just to kind of put things into perspective as far as where we are. Let's see, I've got a little laser light here. So this is the overall project location. So this is I-93, as we all know, exit 17, Suez Falls Road going out this way, Mountain Road here, Merchants Way, and everything that the Rossios have been building up in this area. We've got the river and so forth. You want to advance? So then here's the concept plan. So this is 137 acres, and we're kind of referring to this southern area as kind of the South 95 and this northern section as the North 40. So on here, there's 174 townhomes that'll be more entry-level product for sale. And then there's a self-storage component. And then we have a village center, kind of right here. And then we have a workforce housing component right here. And then more of a higher-end price point condos as will be product for sale as well. And then some more market rate rental units. So, and we'll get through some of the different aspects of it, but some things I want to point out right now is it's 137 acres, but we only are developing just under 50% of it. So over 50% of the land mass that's there now is going to remain as green space. On top of that, there will be over 2 miles of walking, hiking, and biking trails throughout the property. There'll be connectivity across Suez Falls Bridge to the Suez Falls Trail system on the other side. And then we'll get through some of the other more green aspects to it as we go on. Oh, you got a question?
Suez Falls Bridge and the Monitor Building, just as a locator.
Correct. Yep. So here's the Concord Monitor building right here. Suez Falls Bridge is just off this map. Yeah, okay, so on the context plan, here's the Monitor building and the Suez Falls Bridge right here.
Okay, and the railroad track is where?
The railroad track is right here.
Got it. Okay, thank you for giving me the...
Yep, no problem.
How many buildings are you planning?
How many buildings?
Well,
How many units?
Apartments, units.
I'll get to that in just 1 second. There's another slide that shows the amount of each housing type for each of the different phases. We got a question over here?
Yes, you mentioned maintaining green space, and on your website, you
Yep.
state that you plan to preserve 43 acres. Are you pledging to create a conservation easement of that 43 acres to guarantee it'll never be developed?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, but as we go through site plan review, that will be part of it. Part of the green space includes over 200-foot setback from the bluff. So this whole area of land is basically a flat plateau that sits about 60 feet above the surface of the river. And from the edge of the bluff, it obviously slopes down to the river. Well, we're going to be 200 feet back with all of our development from the edge of the bluff, making it even further away from the river. And then we'll get into some of the stormwater things and things like that. But because all of this land is mostly sandy, we're able to discharge all of the water infiltrated back into the ground and keep it on site. There won't be any off-site stormwater. So I saw a hand up here first.
You mentioned the trails.
Yep.
Are those trails open to all city residents?
Yes, very good question. Yes, they will be. And it won't just be for the residents that live within the Monitor Way. It will be open to the general public. Yep.
Why is there not an exit between 16 and 17 being put in for, I think it's
Traffic is a very good
900
question.
units?
We're going to get to that in just a little bit. Ed will speak to that. Yeah, question back here.
Legally to be that far away from them?
There is shoreline protected requirements. We're far enough back where we don't even have to get into the shoreline stuff, and Ed can speak to that a little bit more as the engineer.
All of that is not developed on your end.
Correct.
I'm pointing it out that legally you're required to set that.
There is certain setbacks. Absolutely, you're right. Yep. Question here?
A wildlife corridor. Right now, that whole area is one.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're going to set back 200 feet, you just said, but how about within that space? Is there any open space for?
That's a good question. So there is. I mean, there's a 200-foot buffer all the way along the river's edge, and then there won't be anything developed on this side of the railroad tracks between 93 and the railroad tracks. So there's a swath of land that goes along that way as well. Yeah, we got a question back here.
Are you going to address in this presentation the sewer and water situation?
What's your question regarding sewer and water?
Well, where's it going to come from and where's it going?
So the water line already runs through the site right now. There's a city water line that runs through there. And again, that's an engineering question, but we're told there's more than enough capacity on the water side to be able to service the entire site. And then there's sewer available at 2 locations. One location to head north to the Penacook station, and the rest of it to head south to the Hall Street thing. And again, I'm not an engineer. I would defer to him, but we're told there's more than enough capacity for both of those. Yeah, we got a question back to the mayor.
946 units.
Yep.
What are you going to do with the 1,900 cars that are going to be there? Plus, there'll be more for the stores.
Very
What are you
good
gonna do
traffic
with that?
question. We're going to get to the traffic
It's
in just a bit.
ridiculous.
Okay,
Can you do us a favor and stop accepting questions for a few slides and maybe some of their questions will be answered?
yeah, well, let's see if there's any more right now, but we'll definitely get more questions, so that's a good point.
Who owns the property, the 137 acres?
So it's broken up into 3 parcels right now. There's one little parcel that we currently own, and then the folks, there's the South 95, we're under contract with the owner of that property, and then have an option to purchase on the 3rd piece, so we have site control of it. But yeah, do you wanna, what's that?
New England Family newspapers, or?
Papers of New England,
Yeah.
yeah.
The South, like what we call, refer to as the South 95. We own one parcel, and then the regional co-op owns the, what we call, all the 40 acres.
Just one more question, and we're gonna move on.
Yeah, I was just wondering, with the 50% increase in the population in the Penacook schools, does anybody?
That's a good question about schools. We're gonna get to that in a minute.
People gonna pay for building their schools?
Yep. We've got a whole part of the presentation regarding the impact of the school district, and we're going to get to that point as well. All right, you want to move on to the next slide? So here's the numbers, and we were asking what the numbers were. So as we said, we wanted to offer housing choice, as part of this development. And as a result, we have 71 condos that'll be for sale. 223 market rate apartments in kind of that market rate rental situation, 151 units of affordable workforce housing, and then, I'm sorry? Okay, I'm just going through the numbers here. So 327 units of market rate housing in the Village Center area, and then another 174 townhomes for sale. And then from the commercial side of it, which Dean's going to talk about here in a minute, there's 120 square feet of a mix of commercial and retail space, as well as some other amenities as far as a restaurant with rooftop decks, and then some self-storage as well, some interior climate-controlled self-storage, and some of your drive-up self-storage. In the back, we'll take one, and then we're going to move on and take another one.
And I've been living here since 1990.
Yep.
It's all been houses, 1.5 to 2 acres. Why would I want you to put apartments here, put a strip mall, ruining my ambiance?
Yeah.
My life.
Good question.
So it's like, why would I want this?
Good question. So we need housing, and no one can deny that fact. Well, it is your problem, though.
You can go to Belmont, you can go everywhere you want.
Well,
City Park is going to make $6 million on taxes.
it's all of our problem in the standpoint that we all live here and we've got our nice place to live. But when you want to go out to eat and have a server at a restaurant, there's no workers that can do that. When employers in the area want to hire more employees, they can't because there's no places for their employees to live. So it does affect all of us. You want to make a doctor's appointment and have doctors and staff on there to be able to treat your injuries? You got to have staff to work those jobs, but I'm not going to get into that anymore at this point. So here, we're going to hand it off to Dean now in this next piece. I'll be back in a minute.
Can you please
Beat up on Dean for a
minute.
I'm sorry?
On this particular slide, can you please define workforce apartments for us?
Yeah, I can
Yes.
do that real quick.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just.
Sure. So workforce housing is housing that's designed to be affordable to the workforce. And what that means is that it has to be affordable to a family of 3 earning an income of 60% of AMI. It has to be affordable to them. What affordable is defined as 30% of your income, no more than 30% of your income being applied towards your housing. So
Is it subsidized housing?
it is not. So with workforce housing, we don't discriminate as far as income source. So if someone had a voucher, they could qualify if they meet all the other criteria. So it would, but it's not a subsidized community. So that's the difference too between workforce housing and some of the other, project-based type of housing complexes.
How did you come up with those numbers? proportional?
As far as the densities and so forth?
Well, workforce, why isn't it greater?
Well, that's a good question, but somebody else may ask why the other amounts aren't. So these are the way that the architects and the engineers kind of balanced it out on the site, knowing that we wanted to offer housing choice. It was kind of the ratios that we came up with. I don't really have a much better answer than that.
You went from the original 600 units to 946. Why the increase?
Because we added the North 40 onto the project, and there was some other different things with the design. Hold off on questions for just a minute. I'm going to let Dean get through his segment, and then I'll take more questions after that.
All right, so my name is Dean Everly. Thank you all for coming. So Kevin's gone through the Monterey Way by the numbers. If we can go to the next slide, we'll get into what's near and dear to me in many respects is what we call the village center, and why that's why that's sort of near and dear to me is it's commercial. I love commercial, but the overall arching objective when we started programming this, to sort of piggyback on what Kevin's comment was earlier, is we really wanted to create Concord is the city of villages, right? So we wanted to really create another village within the city, and then create an area that is vibrant, inclusive, and welcoming, and has amenity. It's very amenity rich. So some of the things that we've looked at here are going to be food trucks. So we've programmed the village center. So the ground level will be predominantly commercial. So we're looking at everything from cafes, restaurants, microbreweries, restaurants, et cetera. We do have a program here for a standalone restaurant with a rooftop deck overlooking the vista towards the river. And we also have another standalone restaurant just about here off the screen. So we've programmed it so that we have a lot of outdoor gathering spaces, community spaces, so that not just the residents of this particular village can congregate, but also other people from outside, outside of Monitor Way. Some of the things that we've looked at creating here, or some of the types of tenants that we've talked about bringing in, and we've spoken to several. As I mentioned before, microbreweries. There's a couple that are very interested. Restaurateurs. We've got a few that have expressed interest. Daycare. We're also looking at childcare, daycare, bookstores, and similar. So, yes, sir.
You just said that you were going to do 223 market rate apartments. And that says 327.
So 223 is you want to go back real quick to the contact or the. So yeah, I understand the question because it can be a little confusing. So the 223, these are market rate apartments, and then these will be just apartments, so amenity-rich apartments, maybe with a pool and a clubhouse. This will be more of the urban village, or the village center.
Will the clubhouse be open to everybody?
That will probably be for the people that live in that apartment. That apartment complex.
So the market rate apartment people can't go in the pool?
These people could, yes. Yeah, and we haven't dialed it in to that level of detail. Oh, the workforce?
The workforce.
And the people who own the townhouses?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
How many stores are you planning on putting in?
We don't have an exact number. When you start off with 120,000 square feet, you start to program it by, say, daycare could be 4,000 to 6,000 square feet.
How about an estimation?
How many stores?
Yeah, an estimation.
25, maybe 30. Give or take. Some will be larger, some will be smaller. Think of some financial services like banks. We have a couple of regional banks, New Hampshire-based banks that are very interested in having a location here. So.
Could you just quickly point out where the apartments are on this plot? Guys, you pointed to one.
Sure. So these are what we refer to as the market rate apartments.
Yep.
And these are the village center apartments.
Oh, okay. So they're both apartments.
Yes, they're both apartments.
Where are the workforce apartments?
Right here.
And what kind of size are they? I mean, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? I mean, if you have kids.
We have
we've-
the unit mix. We don't have that information with us today, but it is a mix of studios, ones, twos, and threes.
Yeah,
So a family could possibly live
For
there.
sure.
yeah, yeah, that's the intent. Yes, ma'am.
How many parking spaces per unit, please?
Ed, we're at 1 point, I forget, the number of parking spaces per unit.
Parking spaces about,
Total was a large number, but roughly per
per unit.
per unit.
Depending on, you know, if like the
We do have-
condos in the south end, there'd be, you know, parking for 2 plus some extra visitor parking that would be kind of laid out in the neighborhood area. The apartments are generally around between 1.5 and 2, depending on the type of apartments that you'll see. So call it the village center. Those are probably based on about, you know, 1.5 per unit for residential unit, plus the commercial space. And we got a couple of slides that are in the back if you want to look at the parking requirements, but and we went through a pretty good detailed design on how to park it without creating all this extra parking.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Just one question. You said you were already having conversations with different groups for the commercial spaces.
Yes.
Are these local groups? Are these national groups?
So a little bit about that. I like that question, and for a number of reasons. I'm not a big fan of national brand restaurants. That's just, you know, there are some good ones out there, but my focus, and based on some of the input from some of your community, we're starting to really dial in regional. You know, stay within New Hampshire if possible. You know, keep it local. I love mom and pop restaurants. Yes, ma'am.
Is this a done deal?
Is it a done deal?
Yeah, is this a done deal?
Nothing's a done deal.
Until
the ink's dry.
The second part of my question is, what are you going to be doing, or if you are going to be doing anything as far as insecticides or?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that level, but I think as we've been programming, you know, this is still conceptual, right? And we are starting to dial down into the number of units, et cetera. But you know, there's sort of, you have to walk before you can run. We're trying to walk at a brisk pace, right? So there's a lot of details that we need to get into. I personally am one, I don't put insecticides or pesticides down on my lawn. I like the all natural look. My neighbors may not, but we do mow it, and we do mow it.
There's a lot of ticks in that area.
Are there? Yes, there are. I've picked up a few on walks through, so. So, yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. Okay. We have not, but we will be. Yeah, as part of the process. Have we conferred with Fish and Game? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Can you help me to understand the justification of having 25 to 30 stores here?
Mm-hmm.
We have a mall that's been dead for, I don't know how long this mall's been dead. It feels like decades.
Yeah. So when you have, I like the question in a lot of ways. I won't speak to the mall. That concept, the mall concept, is kind of, it's in our rearview mirror. It's really not what's in front of us. I tend to like looking what's in our windshield versus what's in our rear view. Malls, they'll survive in one form or another. But what we found, so if you're familiar with some of the live, work, play developments, probably the best known to most of us here is going to be Tuscan Village in Salem. You build it and they will come. If you build the housing, the retail, et cetera, follows it. One of the things that we're again, near and dear to me, it's not all about me, but a little bit of it is when it comes to retail, I really, I'm outdoors. I like mountain biking, fat biking, hiking, fishing. So think REI. We have not spoken to REI, so please don't go go on record saying that we've got REI. We don't. But think of that type of store. So athletic gear, et cetera, but something that's geared towards the outside, kayak rental, et cetera. So something that creates a more vibrant and outdoor active community. Yes.
Are there any plans to include office space that
yes.
these workers could actually
yes.
work in?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So we do have some office space programmed into the first level. So, yes, sir.
air quality questions.
Mhm.
You've got the incinerator right next door.
Mhm.
How much fallout's gonna come from that?
We've analyzed it, but we haven't done a deep dive yet. But you know, I've been through there often enough. No odor. I mean, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, we were there and we smelled, you know, an odor, and it was not from the incinerator. It was from the manure being spread across the river.
The stack
yeah.
is generally
We-
high enough where most of that is in the atmosphere and doesn't settle back down out on the immediate perimeter of it.
Yeah, I grew up across from a dairy farm, so I like that smell. But many may not. But I think there was one of the yes. I'll get to you. I promise.
Is any of the parking covered at all? And have you considered rainwater runoff? And
Yes.
perhaps solar?
Yes, yes, and yes.
And we'll get to those.
Yeah, so I'll touch on it quickly. We will get to it afterwards. We have considered rooftop solar throughout. Some of the parking will be covered in this location and in here, so that you want to accommodate, you know, reduce the amount of essentially the footprint of the asphalt, right? So kind of if you can reduce that, put it underneath the building, do a podium style building. Yeah, again, that's shrinking our footprint. Good question. Yes, sir.
Did you ever take a survey on a Sunday afternoon where Massachusetts people going home on the road?
So I very familiar with it, painfully familiar with it. And you know, so we'll get to traffic. I'll let Ed get to that. That's sort of it's not something that we've caused. We're not looking to make it worse, but we're trying.
But you are making it worse.
Yeah, potentially, but we'll get to traffic. The only thing I asked tonight, look, I'll be very respectful if we could just like not throw barbs as we go. We want to address everyone's concerns. One thing that we've learned through the previous PVA meetings, through talking to the counselors, et cetera, we're learning and listening, and we're adapting, right? So we may not have the answers, but we're starting to think things through. Well, one of the things that we incorporated in, we have dog parks. One for the greater Concord area, and then also for the residents. So if you live in Concord, you want to bring your dog to a dog park, we have it here, an outdoor venue. So, you know, small concerts, et cetera. I was at a planning board meeting last night, and I'm not sure why it just dawned on me during that meeting, but there's a development further south from here that's incorporating a community garden. I think that's a wonderful idea. You know, are we committing to that right here and now? No, but we are going to give it some thought. So we're trying to learn and adapt. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, there's a report in the Union Leader at the end of March in an article. The development is garnering public support, and then this is quoted, but those with torches and pitchforks really come out to oppose projects, he said. And I'm talking about Mr. Lacasse. So, I guess for full disclosure, I'm on that latter side. I'm one of the guys with the pitchforks and torches. I was down in Tuscan Village today with my wife. One of the condos in the hotel, that's about 751 square feet, starting price is $615,000. You're talking about workforce housing, 150 of them. They'll rent for $1,100 to a little under $1,400 a month. How are you going to afford to build those?
Are you done with yours?
Yeah, good question. So yeah. We're trying to divide and conquer a little bit. So let's see. Go one more slide through. Yeah. So just a conceptual rendering of what some of the village center might look like, and
I just want to address the woman that was talking about kind of, you know, the environmental component in the storm drain. So in this, our landscape architecture team put this together. We want to feature the development with a lot of what we call green infrastructure. So we're putting all of the stormwater back into the ground. You can see that we have different plant types, all, you know, pollinator types of plantings that will really enhance the environment, but leave as much tree cover that's there today and mix this development into. That's why you see pockets of green between each of those small neighborhoods. We call them neighborhoods in there. So putting water back into the ground, being responsible, treating that, We don't have any point discharge points throughout the entire course, and fortunately, we have the soil type that can support that. So we really focused on really making this environmentally friendly and as responsible as we can. I just wanted to, when I saw this, I thought you'd see more of a tree cover, plants, and more of a green cover that we would feature here.
Thank you, Ed.
Did I assume by your not answering my question, you have as good an idea how you're going to be able to support those apartments as I have?
We'll get to that question, sir. We'd like to sort of go a little bit in order. We're happy to field questions if we can sort of focus them on the presentation or what's in front of us at the moment. So, I'm pretty sure no one wants to be here every night, all night. I'll stay as long as you'd like, but.
I will answer that question, though. It is
Yeah.
a good question, and I
Yes.
understand it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, back to the air quality issue. Air quality isn't necessarily about smell.
Mhm.
This development is next to the highway,
Mhm.
as well as downwind of a trash burner. Can you, did you test for soot and?
We have not tested for soot per se.
Okay, what did you test for? You said you tested for something. Was it smell by your nose?
But that was my own olfactory.
Okay.
That was the limit. That was the scientific test that I
Okay.
performed. So,
All right.
I did well in high school chemistry, but not well enough to actually discern what was coming out of there. So, are there any other questions regarding? Well, actually, if we can sort of walk through the rest of the commercial space.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah. That would be good. So, as I mentioned before, the playground. We have here an amphitheater, sort of a pavilion with a stage, dog park, and another standalone restaurant here. We have been speaking to a potential restaurateur that you would recognize the name, but out of respect, I'm not going to steal his thunder when we get to it. Yes.
I'll make this quick, I promise. Thank you
Oh, that's
so
okay.
much
That's okay.
for taking our questions, first off. I looked at you have a playground, and I was wondering if there was any consideration for making this an accessible playground. We have one on one side of the conference, it'd be nice to have one a little more accessible
Sure.
here as well when you're
I-
developing that portion.
Sure. We haven't drilled down to that level of detail, but I appreciate that perspective and think it would be a very good idea. So, yeah, well, I mean, why wouldn't we, right? So, yes, ma'am.
Where are the pickleball courts?
I knew someone was going to bring that up. So pickleballs are, one of those things where, some people love pickleball. A lot of people love pickleball. If you live next to it, you get a little bit of pushback, right? So that's something that we've kind of kicked around, but we haven't really dug into it. I would like to see it somewhere. It's, maybe behind the self-storage, that we're not, so, you don't have to live next to it. But that question came up last night at a planning board meeting I was at. So, yes, sir.
Who would be responsible for the maintenance of the playground and the dog park? Is it going to be a city facility? Is it going to be?
Probably within the HOA. Or
Landscapers that are going to manage it?
Yeah, it would be under the ownership umbrella of the developer. So
Okay.
it would be developer
Yeah, ownership of it, right. Okay, yes, ma'am.
So is the developer going to own, one developer is going to own all of the apartments, correct? Is that you?
Well,
It's going to own the
all,
apartments?
meaning that the entire project?
I mean the apartments.
The apartments.
So all the apartments are owned by.
Right. It'll be us or an affiliate or
Okay.
somewhere
And
along
then
those lines.
the condos,
Yes.
I imagine will all of those go up for sale? Or
Yes.
some of them be retained also for?
Our
available
our
to
goal is to make,
investors?
so one of the things we're trying to address is housing, right? So if you can make more housing stock available, in theory, prices will at least plateau. Maybe they'll come down a little bit. So make as much of it available for sale other than the apartments. So yes, so we have the townhouses to the south, and we have the townhomes to the condos to the south and the townhomes to the
They're
north.
not the same umbrella as who owns, like not the same company will own the condos as will own the apartments, correct?
The individual
Yeah.
buyers will own the
Yeah.
condos. It'll be
Oh,
part
right,
of an
sorry.
association.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't understanding your question.
I guess the biggest question is overall, long-term, and forgive me for being naive about this and not knowing it, but what is the corporate ownership structure of the whole project? Is there always going to be somebody who is more or less the
Managing
umbrella
it?
for all of it?
There will be somebody managing the entire project as a project, right?
And
So
after it's done?
and it could be different. So there are 6 different, villages within the village, the greater village. Some of the villages we've been approached by some participants that are interested in participating in the village center as an example, right? So, but under all of that, you will have one management company, correct? I mean, that's the way it's being programmed. So
For the landscaping,
yes,
snowplowing,
yes, yeah. Similar to it's essentially condominiums in some ways.
Thank you.
Right. You look.
All right.
Okay. He's like, skip it, brother. One more slide down. All right. You want to chat on this or? So we are talking about 2.5 miles of walking trails. I think we'll probably end up programming a little bit more. That includes just the South 95. I'd love to see, again, what I'd like to see is some mountain bike trails, some pump tracks to get our youth into mountain biking and outdoor recreation, bike paths, public recreation areas. One of the other things that we're bringing along that it doesn't exist now legally is public access to the river along that stretch. Public dog parks, and as Kevin mentioned before, conservation of over 50% of the current woodlands. Outdoor dining and recreational space, EV charging stations, and really just trying to pay attention to the environment as well. Yes, sir.
So on your main map, it has a space for a kayak launch. So it kind of seems silly to have a kayak boat launch on that side of the river when you can go across the bridge and launch your kayak at the Sewell's Falls.
You can if you like, but if you live here, you probably want to wheel it down. Yes, sir. I'll get you.
I mentioned it earlier, and I'm still not satisfied with the response on it. When you put the word conservation of over 50% of current woodlands, you're not conserving anything legally until you put a conservation easement on that property, that part of the property, because 5-10 years down the road, that could easily be developed. I understand there's a buffer between the river and the plateau. You stated earlier you're about 200 feet back from the plateau's edge.
Yes.
You can go back to the.
Yeah.
It's a little misleading to me.
That's not a true statement though. Like when you do a cluster subdivision or you get site plan approval on a certain design, that land is put into conservation in perpetuity as part of the deed restrictions. I don't know if it would be a conservation easement, so to say, but it still doesn't mean that it can be further developed.
Right, so these are areas that we would not develop. Obviously, we've got the 200-foot setback here, but these are areas we would not develop. We would not develop in through here. This is actually where I'd like to see some additional hiking trails and mountain bike trails. One of the things there's a term that's sort of gaining popularity now. It's called gentle density. So if we were to take this, we're putting this on 137 acres. If we were to do the equivalent of single-family homes, we'd be roughly 2 acres per, plus circulation factors within. We're looking at almost 2,500 acres to put the same number of houses or same number of residences in 137 acres. So we're trying to mitigate urban sprawl.
So after you're done the initial development that we see here, what you just explained, and I appreciate you clarifying that.
Yep.
Is it possible in the future that the rest of the undeveloped space could be developed?
No.
No.
Okay.
And we'll address that. Yeah. No, I understand the question. I understand the passion behind that. I get it. Some of this is wetlands anyways, right?
And that's what I was going to say. For a couple reasons, it can't. Because one, we'll be maxed out through our site plan process. On top of that, there's the setbacks that are required, and then there's wetlands buffers as well. So for all those reasons, it won't be.
Scroll back. I promise I'm almost done. You don't have to listen to me much longer. I'm sorry. I missed I saw you earlier. I will. Yes.
About the park ideas. Have you considered connecting north and south?
Yes.
On your park, on your like walkways
Trails.
and bikeways?
Yes.
So that people have places to go to and.
Yes. No, we just haven't reflected it on this plan yet. We've been sort of doing a lot of different things in the background, traffic and school study as well. One more time.
The other question was, aren't there brooks? Aren't
There's two brooks.
Yeah.
There's Hayward Brook to the south and Burnham Brook to the north.
Where would they be located?
Can you go back to the context plan? I see your hand up. I will get you. Hold on 1 second. So Hayward Brook is right about here, and Burnham Brook is right about here. And there's an existing crossing here that is being repaired at some point soon.
What's the bridge going to look like crossing that brook? Gonna be just two concrete sides, steel crossing?
We haven't gotten to that level of design feature yet.
The impact on the brook?
Sure. I'll let Ed speak to the impact. The idea is to keep it minimal, right? When you're doing the construction, there's always some disturbance, but you try to keep it minimal. There's a very pretty, stone bridge there now, a crossing there now, but I understand the question. We just haven't dialed to that level of detail yet. Yes, sir.
So my question is, so I guess if you buy a property, you're assuming the city of Penacook's going to be going along with this because you wouldn't be buying property if you can't do it. So
correct.
That's kind of my point, that it's already been kind of done deal, that because you would be buying property if you're going to get stuck.
So there's a process, and we have to go through the process, right? So, I understand the reason, I understand the question. I guess, anything else to add to that?
No,
Yeah.
I can't add anything to that.
Yeah, all right, okay. One more, two more, and then,
Back to that picture.
which one? This one?
That one.
This one, yes.
So the blue in about the center,
Yep,
that's your storage units.
yes, sir.
What's to the right?
174 townhomes for sale.
Because that's not showing up on your other map.
It's,
Oh, there.
there it is, yeah. I promise I didn't just do that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Currently, this property is zoned industrial.
Correct.
How many hurdles do you have to lay to?
How many? It's going to feel like high school track. Quite a few hurdles to get through, but it's zone industrial theoretically because we did take a look at industrial. Right? It's sort of the easiest path. We could pit between these two properties. These two could fit close to 1 million square feet of industrial, warehouse distribution, manufacturing. It's allowed by right. What you'd lose to me and to Kevin and to the team. That's just not the highest and best use of this property.
Why would you say that was the easiest route for you?
Well, for anyone, because it's zone industrial.
But there's a reason why it was zoned industrial.
There's a reason why?
Yes, originally in the master plan.
Sure.
There's a reason why it was.
Understood. So my specialty is commercial real estate. I understand the industrial market very well. We did an analysis about a year ago, give or take, whether we should pivot to that. Just you've got to check the boxes, right, before you get too deep. We did an analysis, and without digging too deep into the rationale of it, COVID taught us that we need to do more onshoring. We need to be more self-sufficient, at least for the near term, for manufacturing and warehousing. So there was a large influx of developers into the state and some local developers as well that started building industrial. So there's about 3.5 to 4.5 million square feet in the pipeline. There's probably about 1 million square feet that's been delivered, and that pipeline's between, 3 to 5 years from today. So after that, there's an additional 4 to 4.5 million square feet that people have talked about, the developers have talked about. They've earmarked certain parcels. When you look at the industrial market right now, everybody wants to be sort of Manchester South, maybe up into Bow. Bow still has because of the intersection of 89 and 93, but it's a tougher sell. There is some interest in it, but not enough to support what it would take to develop this site.
Isn't it less onerous for a municipality to have industrial rather than the residential with the school impacts and the traffic
I guess the short answer is yes and no. When you look at, we did a tax impact, and I'm probably getting ahead of ourselves, and Kevin's probably trying to kick me, but we did a tax analysis of what this project generates versus industrial. Industrial is a fraction of what this generates from a tax perspective, right? So it's an investment in our investment and the city's investment. And the payoff over time, we can touch on that a little bit later. Payoff over time is substantial. Okay, yes, sir.
Also, if you were to have industrial, where would all the workers come from? Because that's kind of why you're building this
Right,
development.
right. Yeah, that's the other component of it. So yes. So
Yeah, let's move on here and then we'll circle back.
he's getting tired of me talking. I'm getting tired of me talking. I think I'm good. So there you go.
Go ahead. Thanks, Steve. All right, I think we went over this slide, so if you want to advance one more. So I wanted to talk about, this next part is about the phasing and when this project would be built on. So it's not like we say go and, we've got all this built, overnight. I mean, this is going to take time. It's a 10-year project that we're committing once we start construction on it. So it's not like it would all come on all at once. It would slowly be absorbed into the marketplace. So the first phase is this right here. That's the 174 townhomes for sale. Once we get kind of to a critical point of building on here, we would then move on to phase 2, which would be the village center, which would be the commercial and the market rate units above that. This is about 2 years just to build that village center. Once that's underway, we would start construction on the workforce housing component. Now that is probably about a 12 to 18 month build there. So this may start and start construction sooner than this, but this would come online at or before we would start delivering product here. That would be followed by these condos that would be for sale as well, more higher end condos, and these would be sold as they're being built. So the time frame to bring these to market may even come before the workforce housing because it could all be under construction at the same time. We would then round it out with the construction of the last market rate housing complex, and then the self-storage would come in at a point when we deem it necessary for people to, start storing their things. And the reason that we did that, and it sounds like a big project overall, but it really is. But if you break it down, it's not all of one housing type. You have one project here that's manageable in and above itself. It doesn't really compete. The same people buying these units are not the same folks that are going to be renting this village center that want to live in kind of a more Main Street type of setting with more, maybe a nightlife or whatever below them. And that's not the same folks that are living in the workforce housing components, and not the same folks that are buying these higher end condo units. And then these two components may compete to a little bit, but these would be long since absorbed before these even come online. So there's a lot of housing types, and yes, it is a big project, but there's housing choice for a lot of different individuals that will be coming on over time and not all at once. So it's not like everyone's going to be overwhelmed with this massive project all on day one.
Phase
good.
1.
Hold on, I got one more question here first.
On phase 1, are those condos, are they gonna get a view of the trash burning plant?
I'm not sure what the view is yet, but obviously we would have screening and stuff. You got a question here?
Access to the road, are you building the whole road first, or are you gonna let them go up to exit 17?
Next slide, I'm gonna cover the road. Hold on, one more in the back.
So I'm wondering too, if this does get approved on my taxes, I think $13,000 a year, you're gonna have to do something with the middle school for all these people.
Yep.
So how's that gonna affect me?
We're gonna lower your taxes. Hold on, I'll show you in a minute. We've got a slide that'll show that. Question in the back? Hold on. I can't hear you. Can you speak up a little bit?
Was forwarded stating that you approached the city to create a TIF district, tax increment finance district, to pay for approximately what was anticipated to be a $16 million
Yep.
If that's the case, and you're starting to tout the tax benefits of this project, by creating a TIF district, now fortunately the city, it appears, has turned you down at this juncture, but whether they'll come back or work another deal for you, or you'll be coming back for other.
We'll get to that.
Can I finish the
Okay,
question?
finish, but I've got
So
a lot of
the
that
question
in the
is-
future slide.
You're talking about the new revenue will generate, but the first thing you did was go to the city and ask that your taxes be used to pay for a road that you'll be required to put in.
Well-
And none of those taxes would go to the city, none of those taxes would go to the school district, and none of those taxes would go to the county. So how's this gentleman's taxes gonna get lower?
Let me finish the presentation and then I'll show you what I meant. And I wasn't being facetious when I said that. We have slides that'll show you what I meant. So here, why don't we advance to the next slide? So the infrastructure, and what you're talking about now is this whole roadway here. So this whole roadway here is about a $16 million roadway, which includes 2 brook crossings as we described. What we're asking is for the city to invest in this section of the roadway for us to get started here. Our original ask was to build this whole roadway out. Now let me start by saying that that roadway has been on the city's CIP since the 1980s to build that road. But it never did it because there wasn't a reason to. When we presented this project, our initial thought was, we need housing. We're offering a great mixed-use project with all kinds of housing choice. We thought we would have a lot of buy-in on doing that whole road. That wasn't the case, and there was conversations about, the developer needs to bring more to the table. We've gone back and forth. We've been at this for 2 years, so these aren't quick, back of the napkin things that we're presenting here tonight. Our current proposal to the city is for this section of the roadway. That allows us to get started on this area here, and then we would build out all of the rest of this roadway. And I can get into the numbers of what that is after. You want to advance another slide here? So here's the time frame. So we're currently in 2024. We're working through the engineering process and doing the planning on the roadway and so forth. And we would be hoping to be able to begin construction on the condo product and start delivering much needed housing to the market in 2025, 2026 timeframe. Once that was well underway, as I said, we would move on to phase 2, which would be the village center, which would be over 2 years to build, a whole bunch of jobs created in the meantime, and a huge economic benefit to the overall community. And I don't want to forget that piece of it. And then we would begin construction on those 3rd and 4th phases, which would kind of follow suit. And then the last part of it would be the market rate apartment units. You got a question here?
I do. It seems to me that the problem with the city of Concord is that we don't have enough housing, but we don't have enough affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're projecting is that we're not going to have any extra affordable housing for 4 years.
So,
And it just seems to me that the whole point
okay,
of
let
it
me
is
address that.
affordable
Let me
housing.
address that. So you're right. We have in here programmed 151 houses. If this wouldn't happen, we wouldn't have any of those, number one. Number two is there are people right now that are living in affordable housing units all across the city that have the means and the wherewithal that want to be able to buy a house, and they can't because there's no inventory for them to buy. But if they did, that would open up an affordable unit that they're currently living in. So it's bringing on the inventory or increasing the inventory in the overall marketplace that's going to create affordability, not just for new affordable units to be built. So that's just kind of a distinction there.
Just a really quick question, what's the projected cost of the 150 houses approximately?
Projected cost of...
If I want to buy one a year and a half from now when you build, what am I
It's
gonna
going to depend on where construction costs end up, what the road ends up costing.
But you surely are doing the planning, you have some sort of range of what you expect to sell those.
We're looking at those numbers, yeah. Yep.
Maybe you can share them?
No, not yet. Sorry. Another question in the back? I,
You people are gonna profit from this, so you
Yeah.
build the road, don't take the city money. Another thing, right across from this, there's a protected piece of property that will never be developed across the river.
Correct.
Because of the Forest Society.
Well, across the river is a floodplain and a farm, so you're right, that won't be
Yes.
developed. Yep.
I know.
True.
But it'd be nice if we kept things that way. The Conservation Commission, Concord, wants this open. Another thing, the fumes from, the treatment plant do come down to earth. I was, on
I
the
assumed
Swoops
that.
Falls Trail. I thought I was gonna pass out. I called the state engineering department, they came and checked it, it was there. So there will be fumes
Okay.
periodically that are terrible coming down on this development.
Right.
And there's many other problems.
Okay. We got another question up here. Mm-hmm.
So you said it was 151?
151.
Thank you. And then, and so that's what it is, you know now, pretend that that's what it's gonna be when this is done. Is there anything that would preclude individual owners or the corporations of owning this from switching the housing to regular costs and years down the line, or?
So now's a good time to answer your question for the gentleman in the back about how we construct these. So on the workforce housing, you were asking how we are able to finance it and keep the rents locked at a specific rate. So the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority administers several programs to encourage affordable housing, workforce housing. Their main program is called the tax credit program. There's 4% tax credits and 9% tax credits. And those are federal tax credits. And what happens is that they are allocated a certain amount and they apply those to specific projects throughout New Hampshire. Those tax credits are then sold to larger corporations like banks and insurance companies. And the sale of those credits creates equity, and that equity then goes into the project to develop it. And what that does is it keeps the debt service at a low enough rate to be able to ensure that the rents are kept where they have to be. And I mean, there's compliance on that where, you know, you can't cheat it. I mean, the sticks are huge if you mess that up. So those are the federal programs. That's one example. There's CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, which also are included usually in the funding stack of workforce or affordable housing projects. So that's how the equity is created. It keeps the debt service lower to be able to lock those rents in at that specific level. And those are mandates. Those are compliance mandates. Those aren't just, we'll say we'll do it, but we don't have to. I mean, it's mandated.
So to be clear, without tax credits, without potentially a grant or a loan from the Community Development Fund or program, you wouldn't be able to go forward with workforce housing without federal or local or state assistance.
Not apartment rentals. There's no way you could make it work. Nope. The only type of affordable housing that's non-subsidized is manufactured housing communities. And there's certainly a place for those too, and they're great. But we don't have those necessarily programmed on this particular site. You got a question?
Aren't the tax credits only for 10 years?
No. Nope. No, the 9% are actually 99 years. The 4% credits are usually 20. But then there's other layers of other programs that may push that affordability period out even further. So, and usually by the time you get to the end of the affordability period, it's got to be re-syndicated with new tax credits to renovate it, and then it's reallocated for longer. So it's very rare that they actually come out of the affordability piece.
On the workforce housing, you're saying that you're going to make sure that the rents are low. How long are you guaranteeing that to be?
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. It depends on the program, and it depends on the program, essentially. The 9% credits, usually there's a 99-year affordability period. The 4% credits, usually it's a 20-year affordability period. But even when you get to the end of those affordability periods, they're usually re-syndicated bringing more equity in to renovate them at those periods of times, then which pushes out the affordability period even longer. So it's very rare for an affordable housing complex to come out of affordability.
Okay, and,
So.
and once you've passed that, are you gonna sell those?
At 99 years, it ain't gonna be my problem. You wanna advance the slide? Okay, and now we're gonna talk about the much awaited traffic.
Well, there's a question back there, so let me take that one.
Yeah, the housing need in Concord is at what level? So you're kind of competing with Steeplegate, correct? It's a similar kind of development? You know, how many houses
Before we
are
get
gonna
into
be?
traffic, let me just answer that one, and then we'll switch over and focus on traffic, okay?
Yeah.
So as far as the need for Concord, so right now, or last I checked, the vacancy rate was 0.3%. What's that mean? That means 1 in every 333 apartments is available for rent at any given time. You know what they consider a stabilized vacancy rate? 5%. That's 1 in 20. So 1 in 20 is what you should be. So when I'm looking for an apartment, when you're looking for an apartment, or your children who want to stay here when they get out of school are looking for an apartment, 1 out of every 20 homes should be available for them to rent. Right now, it's 1 out of every 333 homes that's available for rent. Now you add in all the great jobs and everything that Merchants Way is bringing to the equation, and all the other employers that want to hire and bring people in, that amount is getting squished even more. So is this going to compete against the Steeplegate project? No, it's going to take this project, Steeplegate project, and probably more to get to a rate where we're stabilized and comfortable. And the reason is because we've said no to development for far too long, and now we're at a point of critical mass where we have to do something. But, sorry, I'll let you get back into traffic.
He's very passionate about traffic.
Yes.
Can you move the mic up a little bit? It's difficult to hear.
That might be only for the video.
No, it's only for the video, but
This is not specific to Concord. Critical mass is southern New Hampshire.
It's everywhere in the state,
Could be all of
including
it.
It's
Berlin.
not like you go to Bow and everything's fine.
right.
No, you're right. It's true all the way up into Berlin. We own, some apartments up in Berlin, just over 100 units, and the same is true up there. It's statewide. You're absolutely right.
But just a point of note, this isn't gonna solve the problem for the people who wanna move in that have children. The problem is that we have a lot of people coming in from out of state buying a second, third, or fourth home.
You're right.
And that is where our housing crisis truly comes from. It's not for the people who live here, it's not for the working force, it's people taking those houses and taking them off the market, using them once a month, once a week, whatever. But that's not gonna help my child or anybody else's child who's trying to get into a home.
It's way more complicated.
It is more complicated,
It's a lot,
yes.
but it's gonna take a lot more inventory to be able to solve it. So you can blame it on the folks to the south, you can blame it on other people, but the truth is, we have children that we wanna stay living in New Hampshire, and we have businesses that wanna grow but can't hire employees. That's true, but anyway, all right, we'll talk about traffic.
Well, this is great. Again, my name is Ed Roberge, and I'm with an engineering firm. I'm a civil engineer, so I've been to a lot of PBA meetings, and I'm so happy to see this. This is probably the largest group that I've ever seen, and probably the most vivacious, too. You guys, I mean, this is great to see the Penacook Village folks and Concord folks together. I'm really pleased about that. So let's talk a little bit about traffic right here. So as Dean outlined and as Kevin outlined, we started with a concept, and that concept we floated by several times with the PVA already. And then we said, okay, now that we have what the development program is and all the responsibilities that we took with that, we said we really need to start looking at traffic. We need to look at traffic, and we need to look at how does this affect the schools, because we knew that in a previous PVA meeting that was really important. So this is just a sketch here. This is what we would call our project study area. We had our concept plan, we developed that, then we went to the city, and we had what they call a traffic scoping meeting. We met with the city, we met with the state, and we outlined what would be the area that we would need to study for a project like this. So you can see these large orange dots are all intersections in roadway segments. There's 12 of them that once we got the scoping, the entire work scope done, we set out to do a lot of work. And again, if we're here, you can see that we're I'm trying to make this work here. At our site, Sewell's Falls is at the bottom. US Route 4 or Hoyt Road is to the north. The big roundabout location right here, Merchants Way, the Merchants Way development, and the rest of the Whitney Road ends about right here today. And you can see it crosses through exit 17, along Hoyt Road and Mountain Road, and as I said before, Sewell's Falls Road in the south. This is the monitor site, just to give you perspective of where we are. So we had 12 intersections that we needed to look at. We had to count traffic at all of these legs. So that is existing traffic. When we met with the city, we talked about, there's growth. What growth factor do you want us to use? Traffic will continue to grow with or without this project, so that's important. The city uses a 1% growth factor. The state wants us to use, on the state facilities, they want us to use a 1.5% growth factor. So we built all that into the model. As I said, we did traffic counts today. We understood that. We had to analyze intersections. We looked at site distances at all of these intersections, and then we came up with a traffic model. And we said, okay, if we build this, how much traffic is it going to generate, and where's it going to go? And if you go to the next slide, this is the slide that's talking about phase 1. Now, and as Kevin just described before, this is the Whitney Road extension, as we call it, or Monitor Way. Sometimes we call it Monitor Way, whatever the final name of that roadway. And he's right. The Whitney Road extension has been on the city's books way early 80s. I mean, I remember the early days of that when in a previous life. So we knew that it was there, and it's exactly right. When would it be built? And how would it be built, and what would it support? And this is all industrially zoned land, and that was the forethought. It just never happened. And maybe there's a number of reasons why it didn't, but let's just talk about this and how this affects us. So phase 1 is really the first for sale condos there's 174 of them. And if phase 1 roadway is built, to this end all the way back out to along Whitney Road out to Route 4, obviously 100% of the traffic that's generated here would actually go out along this way. Now, somebody before asked the question about exit 16 and a half. That's another one that's has been talked about since the 60s. It's come and gone. And I will say this, that when we did the Sewell, well, I say when the city replaced the Sewell's Falls Bridge, they actually extended and upsized the water main that crossed that bridge, as well as the sewer, sanitary sewer. Because if you know that out here on Sanborn Road, this is actually, some of those locations right there are zoned RM. So it was designed and zoned for a more dense neighborhoods, for the fact that you could potentially at some point in the future extend water and sewer. They also knew that there was going to be some sort of generator that, whether it was industrial or something different, the thought process here was we needed to add capacity. First of all, the city needed a better bridge. I loved the old Sewell's Falls Bridge. So people call it the most friendly bridge in the world, because it was people needed to be quite, there was a lot of courtesy that needed to happen there to make it work. But once the bridge was replaced and the utilities were there, now it's really ready for development. And that's not what I'm really getting at. But the point is that there's been a lot of traffic change since that bridge was built, because first of all, you couldn't get an ambulance over it, the old bridge. You couldn't get a school bus over it, and you certainly couldn't get trucks. And you probably see a lot of that activity now since that opened back in 2015 or 2016 when that opened. So with this, we applied our model. We said 100% of the trips are all going to go out here. There's 174 units. So we looked at, I thought tonight's conversation would be really more so focused on the localized traffic impacts as opposed to the regional and state traffic impacts. So what's blue is the regional and the state corridor. That ties into I-93 with US Route 4, both north and south. When we get past this location here at exit 17, this really turns back into the local street organization. So I wanted to make sure that we understood if we were generating traffic there, and ultimately when we generate traffic for the entire site, we knew where those trips potentially could go. 174 units generating traffic. In this ADT is average daily trips. That's the total average of vehicles two-way that travel up and down that road. Right now, it's a little over 2,000 that are there today based on what we measured. In 2025, when this potentially would go online, the ADT would be about 2,172. Call it, just under 2,200 cars. With the addition and the distribution of wherever folks are going, and we looked at it in a number of areas. We said if people would get up to the intersection here, they might be going north or west. They might be going south or east. Wherever they might be going, we were measuring the addition of about 13 new trips to the traffic. That would bring that up to, again, about 2,185 in year 2025. That's less than 1/10 of 1% or 0.01% of traffic growth in that time frame. Likewise, the same thing here. Again, any trips that might be coming around here and heading south on Mountain Road or either southwest on Sewell's Falls, about 26 trips or 0.01%. That ADT is a little bit higher. It's about 28. Right now it's about 2735. So call that about 2,700 cars on average a day, except for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because that is a disaster. And I'm glad you brought that up, because what's really part of that problem is the Bow-Concord I-93, and we don't need to get into that here, but part of that is to fix that problem so people don't divert. Because as soon as the cars pile up and your Waze turns red, it's telling you to get off here and drive down that road. We talked to the state about that through our scoping, and I'll get to you in a second. We talked to the state about that issue. And they're doing a road safety audit right now. And we asked them if they would be willing to share that data with us eventually. I think they will. They just weren't ready to do that yet. But the important thing is that diversion is creating a disaster. And yeah, you live on Farmwood Road. Yeah, that's tough to get out because you got a constant. It's either going northbound or it's going southbound. Probably mostly southbound. So it's hard to take a left out of there. But fortunately, you have a market basket now, so you can take a right quick and get out eventually. But you had a question.
So my question is, too, if this does get passed, so are you planning on widening the roads so there's more cars going, and traffic lights, and make it like a city with the country? I mean, what's your plans for that?
That's a good question, because part of the study that we look at is how does our new traffic impact the existing road network? So when we see something like 13 trips or 0.001, that doesn't rise to the need of any change. Even the same thing here, 26 trips to add to the total that's still under, just over 3,000, under 3,000, or even on Sewell's Falls. We weren't anticipating any trips that would go on Sewell's Falls to head southerly if you lived here. Not to say that there wouldn't be, but the model is saying that there's inconsequential volume that would be added to Sewell's Falls. And that, again, there's no roadway connected, so this becomes kind of really a far barrier. So none of these, we didn't find the need for any mitigation, if that's the term I'll use, in phase one. Yes.
What do you say about Route 4 there and the Blue Regional? Why, what are the numbers on that road? How does that get affected?
Well, when we look at the model, so why don't you go to the next slide? When we looked at the model, we knew that that the distribution split, now I'm going to talk about this 2080 right now, 100% of the volume here, or 174, I'll play with a number, 174 units create 10 new trips a day, so there's 1,740 trips. We know that there's points north. We're finding that a lot of our model is using I-93 and to come and go to points north and south. Really a heavy amount of it. So not to say that we're not interested, and certainly the state will be interested in, and certainly we want to know about what's not only on this road but also on Whitney Road. There was a considerable investment that just happened here as well as just happened here. So we have to really be mindful about how this project, how people come and go, how do they get there? We want a nice neighborhood, but it needs to be a reliable transportation system at the same time. So it's not that we didn't study it, we did. I just wanted to focus on these local streets because I think these local streets are probably what there's a lot of interest in this group right here to understand a little bit better.
Well, I'm just thinking that if 174 families move in, they're probably going to go to school in this building, and they would get there by going west on Route 4 through downtown Penacook.
They would go west, and then they could come around this way, or they could loop around. You're right. That's a fair analysis. Yeah, let me go here, and then I'll come back here. Yes.
Can you just help me with the math? How does 174 become 13 trips?
13 trips?
Yeah.
Just because of distribution. And when we're saying average daily trips, there's 174 units. They could be going a number, and I'm going to say again, when we're talking about, when we look at when this roadway is fully built, there's certainly more than the number of trips that I'm describing. I'm just saying the number of trips that are on each of these legs is split out. So 174, I said times 10 was 1,740. There could be, and I'm just using a number now, there could be 1,500 that are using 93 that are coming off of the local street system. That won't affect the local street systems. Let me go here.
Only one car for each of those homes?
I'm sorry?
Only one car for those homes?
No, there's typically.
Numbers on.
Well, I mean, from a traffic analysis standpoint, that's just,
Well, it's 2 cars, you should use 2 cars.
yeah, a 1 trip in and out, 2 trips in and out, 10 trips a day. Yeah.
So I know you said that the state was looking into the highway system right there. All right, you got 20% and 80%. So I would be using 4 to go to Market Basket. So that 80% coming into the rotary seems like high to me. So you only got 20% going this way. Has anybody talked to the state? Now, I don't want to see an on and off ramp there. So you could call it, exit 17A and B. So southbound, you could have just an on ramp, and northbound, just an off ramp. That way, a Friday or a Sunday afternoon traffic won't be getting off onto Sioux Falls to get off the red from the backup traffic. But it would ease Route 4 rotary traffic getting on to exit 17 on to 93 south. If you had just a south.
So a half interchange.
A half interchange.
Yep.
And that way, because I don't want to see people getting off southbound onto Sioux Falls. But people, but if they're coming back from Concord, they can get off and they don't have to go up to exit 17. They can get off and go, and that would also ease the traffic for all the people that live off of Sioux Falls Road and up in that area, because now they don't have to go all the way and go up and around. And
Let me just add, is anybody here from DOT before I say something? The city has been talking about this. I've been talking about this for decades. And this, at one point, there was a planning study that was completed on a half interchange that you're talking about right now. But it didn't go anywhere. Can I ask somebody to, raise your hand if you were in support of exit 16 and a half.
Clarify that.
Yeah, clarify, because I'm not into it.
Is anybody interested in exit 16 and a half, as you said? A northbound off-ramp and a southbound on-ramp?
Yes.
So this is a change, because years ago, yeah, nobody wanted that.
We didn't have 1,000 people living there either, though.
Well, that's a good point.
I
So,
noticed your
so let me
0.01%.
digress, but go ahead, you had a question.
I noticed your 0.01% just increased, I think 16%, 36, is that right?
Yeah. So now we have a different scale. And I wanted to talk about that because through phasing we have, this 5-10 year implementation. So there's a buildup of traffic. Our traffic study looked at 2025 numbers, and then we looked at our development program to 2030, and then we're asked to study it through 2040. That's why you have 2040 numbers that are on here. So our numbers did go up. So, and part of that, again, I want to note, as we said, we did traffic counts. We understand what the traffic volumes are today. We did annual growth factors. We sat down with the city and said, hey, city, what development, is going on? Well, we know there's something big on Fisherville Road. We know that there's something big at the intersection of Manor and Abbott, and we know that there's continued development out here along Whitney Road for more infill, potentially. So we collected all that to make sure that we built our model on not only our development, but plus that background growth. So we are seeing a growth. Now we're seeing 276 trips in 2040 that would be part of that. So that's an 11% growth over that 15-year study period. That's what we're talking about. 36% growth over that same 15-year study period. About 1,200 along this. Now keep in mind, this is two-way traffic. The other piece too that we've always been talking about is, once this road is open, does it attract other people? If you lived here, what would be your choice to get to Market Basket? Not to pick on Market Basket, but that's a good destination, and it's a fabulous Market Basket, by the way. So you're probably going to come here and go there.
Yeah.
So we included a number of pass-by or bypass travel, some trips that are just generated to get to other locations and not in ours. And part of our traffic distribution as well, somebody asked about how do you connect to the south and to the north? Well, we're hoping this is really designed as a walkable community. Live, work, play is what Kevin and Dean talked about before. We want to make sure that there's connectivity along this roadway so somebody could go shopping and not have to get into a car. And we're keeping about 10%, maybe a little better than 10%, of internal capture of vehicles that can do whatever they need to buy and get and play. They can do that without even leaving Sewell's Falls or leaving Whitney Road. So part of that is also built into the model. So we're seeing, again, if that's the highest number, if I want to focus on that, 16%, again, 15. If we're getting, if we're growing at about 36% over a 15-year period, we're still talking about, a 2% growth plus or minus. And that includes development and background growth. So let me get to the back area. I'm going to start this way, and then I'm going to loop that way. Sir?
Well, just a couple of questions. I hope they're not too challenging. I am curious as to how you decide which direction people are going. Having lived here 40 years, being on the other side of the river and needing to get to, say, Concord Hospital, West Concord, where an awful lot of people work. If you live over here, and particularly if you're on this side of the river, you're going to have to cross Sewell's Falls Bridge, and then you create massive amounts of traffic snarls over on Fisherville Road, and there's a couple of feeder roads around the backside of Concord that get ridiculous amounts of traffic. I understand and it makes sense that you've got just about everybody getting on the highway, but there's a lot of advantage. Once you've lived here a while, you find the routes that aren't as populated.
And you're exactly right about that. Everybody has their secret way of going.
Not anymore. Well, it used to be Sewell's Falls. If you wanted to get to this side of the east side of Concord, you come across Sewell's Falls and go down.
And by the way, I love that.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are tools in our model that we use to help distribute traffic. And it's usually looking at, you know, what is the nexus of the best way out? You know, what's the shortest distance? We have tools called Journey to Work. That's a tool that looks at all of, you know, and we examine Concord and the data sets that are built there in terms of where people work and where people go. So it allows us to trend, and this is what we're coming up. And we thought it was pretty conservative, again, because the I-93, the fact that the roundabout is at its capacity, I mean, it has ample capacity now, and it was well built. It's really a good attraction.
So I would like to point out that, and I hope your models take this into account, but places like this, where we have a major river, you've got 4 bridges, the one across 93 crossing the Merrimack doesn't count. Well, maybe it does, but you got 5 bridges between Route 4 and the south of Concord.
Yeah.
So it's always, those bridges are creating massive funnels crossing the river.
I'm trying to balance east-west traffic and north-south traffic
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the model. But you're right, there's not enough, I would agree that
I know
there's
we
not
got a
enough.
great
promise.
conversation about it sometime.
Yeah, Laura, you had a question.
And thank you. I just want to make sure that you're presenting what you think you're presenting. Localized traffic impacts, an additional 1,200 cars a day you're showing on Mountain Road. You're not saying that that's all from your development. That's including the background growth, correct?
That is including background growth.
Okay, so maybe if you have that number, you might want to present what is only from your development. Because the way that reads right now, it's all coming from your development, and I find that really hard to believe.
And I appreciate that, and I think, again, when asked, I'm trying to keep it in the simplest form to say, we're gonna see, you know, 1,200 additional trips with this development. Would we see that without the development? No, we wouldn't see that. But we continue to see growth. But that's a good point, thank you. And we can clarify that. I'll go to you. Well, let me go that way, because you didn't have your hand up before. You did before, but somebody had their hand here.
I do. I am a little concerned about traffic and children. Does your plan call for really good sidewalks and places where kids are gonna have to wait for school buses?
Can I can answer that real quick. Yes, actually, that was one of the things we really designed this whole community around, is the walkability. You know, one of the things that we had picked up from, as far as, you know, Concord Next was a zoning initiative, and I'm not sure where that's at now, but one of the things that we gathered from that was the idea of having a building in the back of a sea of parking lot was an old way of thinking, where you park your car and then you gotta run across a parking lot or a street to get to your destination, hope you don't get hit, or little kids walking or whatever. We did this opposite. We actually brought the buildings closer to the roadways and made wider sidewalks and made it more walkable, and had the ample amount of parking, but in the rear sides of the buildings as opposed to up front, to make things more walkable. So,
Okay,
yes.
Will you have designated areas for buses to pick children up?
Yes, yep. And then I'll let Ed finish his line of questioning on the traffic, because I'm gonna say more stuff after as well.
And also, part of the conversation included, you know, what potentially could happen with, hold on a second, sorry. What could happen with Concord Area Transit? And right now, without Whitney Road extended and connected, you know, the bus does come up to Penacook Village. There could be a better loop that opens up more assisted travel, which I think is really an important piece to do. So the long straightaway, Whitney Road extension used to be designed like this, and this is where the water main is today. It goes all the way up like this. So this long, flat right-of-way, we were concerned about that just because of speeds, and so that's why we brought the roadway in. And where this intersection is right here, it's not an intersection because this is really the open space, but we put a raised table in here, meaning we put the crosswalk up at the sidewalk level, kind of like a large speed table that would slow people down. So that neighborhood connectivity, wide sidewalks, really traffic calming, all of that kind of adds up. There was another hand here, I'll go there, and then I'll come back.
Thank you. I was curious about spaces for the bus, the CAT. And have you thought of designated areas for the Concord area transit? And the other question was about making sure that there's a separate a separate place for walking and biking, because if anybody has tried to bike on Fisherville Road, they take their lives into their own hands, and really make it connected so that you can get all the way to downtown without doing that.
This is a little bit different type of street than Whitney Road. When Whitney Road was originally designed, it was a 40-foot wide roadway. So it was 2 12-foot lanes and 2 8-foot shoulders. That's excessively wide today. We don't build neighborhood streets that way anymore. And I'm glad Concord changed its design standard to reduce that. So we're looking at narrower widths, but more width for sidewalks and more width for bike lanes. So this is a complete multimodal corridor that could connect up to where we want to be able to get people to cycle. And again, we talked about the partnership with the city making an investment. Part of that reason is because, and Kevin will get into this shortly, but we don't control that property up there. So we do need a partner that's going to continue the complete street investment up to tie this in, because we think that that's really important.
Did your traffic study include the transit?
The transit?
Yeah.
That's a separate line. I mean, we don't. There would be 4 bus trips a day, likely, maybe 6. So I don't think that would have a significant impact in our trip generation that we've been talking about. Let me go here, and then I'll go back to you, Al. Yeah.
So I came here this evening under the impression that you were asking the Penacook taxpayers to pay $16 million for the entire length of the road. And I appreciate the partners proposing to pay for some of it, although I feel think you should pay for all of it. My question is, the part that you are proposing to pay for, once it is built, and once this project is finished, is that a public roadway?
Yes. Yeah.
Publicly maintained road?
It would be a publicly
open to the public?
accepted city street. That is correct. That's correct. And yeah, I think the ownership is willing to invest in a substantial portion of that.
From the 16 million
Not just a split. Yeah, they're investing a significant amount of infrastructure there. I'll go back here.
The follow-up I had,
Yeah.
so the follow-up I had to that, is there anybody from the city of Concord here this evening? I meant like the city government.
City council.
So does anyone have any thoughts on that proposal at all? Is that a formal proposal that they've given you guys?
No.
Can you?
Okay, thank you.
There's some slides that Kevin's going to talk about in a second, so we can get to that if we can stay on traffic for right now. Yeah, thanks.
So just a general question on traffic. You are not proposing any mitigating factors at this point because at least I haven't heard anything about lights. I haven't heard anything about bike lanes outside of your development. I haven't heard anything about friendly outside. I'm not saying that I've heard things about your development itself, but to be fair,
Yes.
to take a right off of Sewell's Falls on a Friday is nearly impossible, or a Sunday is nearly impossible
So we do.
without a light.
Yeah,
Now.
that's a great point. In the traffic study, we need to be honest with ourselves too, because we understand the impacts. With our split of traffic, we know that what could happen at this intersection. We've been talking about what's going on at this intersection as well, and then any of the other intersections along. We're showing mitigation options that might crop up in a particular year, whether it's 2030, 2031, 2032. Part of that study would be now to sit with the city and understand what those traffic impacts are, even what's happening up in here. You know, with the roundabout at its, you know, how will this project impact the capacity of that existing roundabout? So all of that is documented. Can I say that, you know, we have a mitigation plan right now? No, we don't, because you know, what we would typically need to do is submit a formal application to the city. Then we would submit our traffic study that we completed. We started a little bit early, and we met with the city, and we met with the state to scope it. Now they would review it, analyze it, and then they'd come back with us with some suggestions.
One more question is,
Yeah.
Mountain Road 132, is that a city or a state mitigation? State.
It's a state until way down here where the urban compact line is, which is close to East Concord Village.
All right, thank you.
Actually, it's at the Country Club Lane, yeah, Country Club. I'll go here, yeah.
Thank you. So my math may be all wrong, but if you put in 946 units, 2 cars to a unit, that's close to 2,000 cars, not counting the people who are going to be working at the different places that are going to be part of this Concord Way, who will be coming to work every day. I live on Sewell's Falls Road, which is an incredibly busy road now before we add this development. And I've already gone to the city, not because of you, but because of the traffic right now on Sewell's Falls Road. There are no sidewalks near Beaver Meadow School, unlike the sidewalks you want to put in, which is wonderful for kids walking to school or whatever. There are no sidewalks, and people zoom down Sewell's Falls Road. They think it's a racetrack. So my concern is adding maybe half that amount, 1,000 more cars going down Sewell's Falls every day. It's going to be outrageous.
Yes.
I can't hold my hand up any longer. So I live on Mountain Road, and if you look at Sewell's Falls Road and Mountain Road, that intersection, my next door neighbor has had cars run into her house, and she is right up on the road. Luckily for me, I am back further on the road, but I see them going 100 miles an hour up and down Mountain Road. It's a very dangerous, dangerous road. Something has to be done to where that 2,000 or 1,000 cars is not going to come through that stop sign. Something has to be done.
And I would agree with you. I know there's a long history with that. Even if this project or any project happened, that's still an issue. That's an issue that, you know, I think the state, the city needs to partner in and come up with. I've had dozens of conversations in a long time ago with East Concord Village folks having that same issue, and that's an ongoing issue. I'll go here, I'll get to you, Al, in a second.
You spoke earlier regarding traffic, but you started talking about some DOT conversations. Could you elaborate on that? Because what I thought I heard was that part of the problem for Mountain Road, Sewell's Falls Road, has to do with what is not happening on the highway, and people are then diverted.
Yeah.
So that sounds like the problem that everyone here is having with that, because something else isn't fixed, so they found another way around. So in those conversations that we've had, are they DOT open to, or at least recognizing that those are the issues and potentially doing something to help mitigate that, so that the folks here who will continue to have this problem, whether this project is built or not, might not have that problem, regardless?
That's a great question. So she's really saying, she's asking, what I said before about a road safety audit and the DOT looking at that bypass issue. So the bypass issue is just a symptom of the problem, and the problem is the congestion at the Bow-Concord corridor. That was supposed to be built by now. It should have been open in 2024 if it had started 8 years ago like it was supposed to, but it kept getting kicked down the road. And I understand that. That's a complex, big problem. And when that congestion occurs, and it happens, it's building up, right now. It'll start a little bit on Wednesdays now, and it builds from there. It's just when that's coming home and the S curves are only 2 lanes and there's a sight distance issue, it just slows everybody down and then people bypass. And they like to bypass right here. Or even up at 18, they start to bypass. So if that is eventually fixed, which is under study right now, and it's probably in more beyond study, they're probably in some level of preliminary design right now, but at least they recognize the issue out here. So I was glad to hear that, and they want to look at the intersection down here. And I apologize that it's off the sheet, but I didn't want to get too big with the map so you couldn't see. But they understand the issue, and is there a way to mitigate that? Is there a way to slow people down? And people have talked about traffic light in the past, and an all-way stop sign, and a roundabout at this location as well. So all of those ideas were floated out. Even when exit 16 came along, that was a chance to try to slow traffic down in East Concord Village. And this is something that will need to be explored, and through a partnership, because this developer doesn't control a lot of that background issue, but can certainly look to see what best solutions there could be. Let me go to Al in the back, and then I'll come up front.
And then maybe one more, and then we're just gonna go right through the rest of the presentation, and then we'll stay as long as you guys want to answer any questions, but to be respectful of some people that wanna leave, we'll get through the rest after. We'll take 2 more questions.
So, I was disappointed to see that we're once again talking about an exit 16 and a half on and off ramps on Sewell's Falls Road, and I'll explain why I'm so concerned about that. And it's been a concern of mine since around 2000 when we were discussing the 2020 plans. So if you go back and you look at 393, which was designed to help direct traffic from Route 4 and up the coast, but also to alleviate traffic on Loudon Road. And if you look at Loudon Road now, and before 393 was built, Loudon Road is more crowded. And the reason Loudon Road is more crowded is because we didn't plan well. If you're going to build more roads, you have to think very seriously about growth control. Not growth control where you stop growth, but the type of growth that you're going to have, so that by building roads, you don't wind up with more of a problem than you started with. If you put in exits on 16, if you have 16 and a half exits there, the state's going to look at that, and they're going to want to have the idea that we potentially could have a 6-lane road coming through Concord. They're going to continue to force an 8-lane road, because that's their preferred plan. And that 8-lane road won't stop at exit 15 or 16. That 8-lane road will go all the way through to exit 17. And once that 8-lane road is, taking a look at Concord's past history with planning, that will only allow the city to develop to a point that that 8-lane road becomes useless down the road. So it's very important to look at what we have, where we want to go, and to think about if we add these exits, what are the consequences to development, not only in Concord, but the development on 93 that's going to also impact the whole character of our community. Not that this type of development won't impact that character, but think of what an 8-lane highway going through Concord will do to our city. And by adding exit 16 and a half, that's only a green light for the state to say, see, we told you, you have to have those 8 lanes.
I want to make sure that I didn't mischaracterize anything. When I talked about the exit 16 and a half, that's only because of a history that I happen to know about. And I've always been kind of curious about that. There's no intent to build a 16 and a half. And that's why it died a long time ago, and it probably will never come back, and it's all of those factors that Alan was just talking about, that's not what the character is all about up in here. So, having said that, I'm gonna.
Okay, I thought we had one more, and then we'll proceed with
Was
the
there one
rest.
question here?
Yeah, right here in the front.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it was, yeah.
So, we already know the traffic's gonna be an issue just with the apartments and condos and everything. I You know, that's the goal for more housing. Why add in 25 to 30 stores and restaurants that we don't need, that will make the traffic even worse and bring in people from outside the area? You know, they get stuck on the highway on Saturday or Sunday, they come down Mountain Road to get there. We've got tons of restaurants downtown, you know, we don't need this.
Well, and I respectfully respect your opinion, but everyone has different opinions, and other people wanted to see some commercial mixed in with the housing. So you can't please everybody. You know, it's one of those things. But all right, let's advance to the next slide. So now I'm just going to go right through, and then we'll hold questions till the end at this point. So the environmental benefits, we know, you know, we've talked a lot about those things right now. And we've talked about this term gentle density. So if we had planned a development of this magnitude under the guidelines of, you know, 1-2 acre zoning, as Dean had mentioned, that would have included urban sprawl of about 2,500 acres of land, where we're keeping this in a dense corridor. More than 50% will remain as wooded, as we discussed earlier. Over 2 miles of walking trails, which again gets people outside, active, interconnected with some of the other trails throughout the city. And then building will be constructed using the most latest energy efficiency standards. So if you look at what the carbon footprint, let's say, would be of these 946 housing units in comparison to, you know, an existing 946 housing units throughout the city, this will be a fraction of what that is. So this is a step in the right direction of conscious development is from an environmental standpoint. I'm going to hold questions till the end. And this was, again, we had talked about infiltrating the water back on site. There won't be any water discharge, and that's designed to a 100-year flood. Limited wetland and buffer impacts as well, and then the culvert expansion, which we talked about. And then no shoreland development impacts because we're staying away from that shoreland. So let's go to the next one. I know this is a big one. So kids in the schools, I know, is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts because we don't want to see our taxes increase. And this is one example. So I'm not a kids in schools tax impact expert, but who is this Dr. Richard England. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He has focused a lot of his work on the ramifications of kids in school systems and the subsequent tax impact that would create. He's a doctor and a professor at UNH. So we hired him to do an impact study specifically on the Merrimack Valley School District. So this is some highlights. We have a full report, and we'd be happy to share that if people are interested. But these are the highlights of what that report said. So in the last 12 years, enrollment has decreased by 460 students. Now, this has nothing to do with our project. This is just simply people are having less kids, whatever the case may be. No housing. Okay. So now he's estimating that our project, our full build out, now we gave him a schematic of what our unit mixes will be, and we don't have that as part of the slide. I haven't memorized them. But he estimated how many students this project will bring in. So he estimates it'll bring in 150 new students at full build out. Now these aren't, again, coming all day one. These will be trickled in. And again, these aren't my numbers. These are the guy that specializes in figuring this stuff out. Now, the other thing to know about is the schools get their funding from multiple sources. One of them is from the state adequacy grant. That is based on the on the student population. That has nothing to do with the expenses of the school system. It's simply if you have 100 kids, you get 100 times whatever the adequacy grant is that year. It's just over $4,000 right now. If you lose a kid, you lose that $4,000. If you lose 10, you're losing 40 grand. By adding 150 kids back into the school system, we'll be adding about 630,000 in total adequacy grant. Because the schools were able to previously support an additional 460 students, there is capacity in the school to be able to absorb another 150. Now, the other thing this assumes, and I think even wrongly so, is that the student population has continued to decrease, and there's no signs to show that it's going to not continue to decrease. What we're saying here is that now we're drawing a line in the sand, and it's no longer going to continue to decrease in the overall population. Instead, we're going to stop it in its tracks, and we're going to add 150 to it. That's what this assumes. I think this is even a little bit more, but I'm not the professor he is. But by that, he's saying that 150 kids, given the classroom sizes, and it's in his report how he figured it out, could absorb that 150 students without adding more teachers to it. He said that the likelihood, though, of all those kids being evenly dispersed amongst from K through 12 is probably pretty limited. So he's saying that we would probably need to hire an extra 3 teachers. And that's where he's saying, that cost difference between the 630 would be a couple $100,000. So the revenue could likely be an additional $430,000 to the school district by adding these kids into it. That doesn't account for the taxes that we'd be paying into the school district as part of the tax revenue generated from the project. That's simply from the adequacy grants. So I know Merrimack Valley or Penacook and Merrimack Valley School District, you guys' tax rates have been increasing. Am I wrong? They've been going up. Look at what's happened to the student population. They're going up because the amount of kids in the schools is decreasing. It's not because of an increase in the schools, it's because it's decreasing and you're not getting the adequacy grants to cover it. So that's a big factor as to why the tax rate is going up. So if we bring more kids in, it actually attracts more adequacy grant on top of the tax revenue that we'll be bringing in. That kind of helps balance that. So let me finish with the last slides, and then I'm sure you guys may have further questions and we can jump back around after. So tax revenue. So we're asking the city to make an investment of 4.67 to do that first section of the roadway. I say it's an investment because it generates tax revenue. Now, we need police stations, we need new schools, we need all these things, and I get that, but those are 100% expenses. They're not investments where you're expecting a return of equity on that investment. An investment in this project is gonna generate these types of taxes. Now, these are the taxes that we had come up with. Dr. England said our assessments were way low and they should actually even be a lot higher than that. But we're sharing with you today what we had come up with even previously. So with a 4.67 million investment, and that's not even cash that's paid day one. That's bonded and paid out over a period of 20 years, which at an bond interest rate of 5.5%, again, which I've told is high, is a payment of about $385,000 a year. We're going to be generating, it's over $7 million a year at full build out. And of course, there'll be other expenses, fire, police, we understand that. But that is a huge amount of tax revenue that will be generated that is currently not being generated. Now that's in addition to the adequacy grant on an annual basis that we were talking about. So again, we can come back if we made that clear, and I think that might be the last slide. You want to advance? Oh, no, that's right, There's more. So, yeah, this is just, again, kind of a breakdown of some of the assessed values of when the different phases are completed. So what we're offering, like we said, is to build that last section of the roadway. So out of that $16 million road, we would be taking on the bulk of it and asking the city for the initial investment of doing that first section of it so we can get started with the project. And we feel, like we said, as it's an investment with a return that's owed to the city. All of us, as taxpayers in the community, if you were able to invest and get a return on your money, you would do that. And this is what we're asking. It's not an expense to the extent that a school or a police or any other public expenditure may be if it didn't produce tax revenue. And then, so the first section alone, just that first phase of it will have an assessed evaluation of over $43 million. That'll be taxable property to the city of Concord. And then, like I said, we would build that next section, which is over $10.9 million. That's on us as a developer to build that section of the roadway, public infrastructure that would be handed over to the city upon completion. And then the mixed use, the village center would produce an assessed value of over $81 million. Again, that'll be assessed and paid taxes on that on an annual basis. Let's go to the next slide. And then the workforce housing, the valuations on those are a little bit less, but it's still an evaluation of $22 million. And it is workforce housing, and it is still taxed. So it's not like it's not a taxable type of property, exactly. And then the townhomes, again, an evaluation of 18.8, and I think that's low because of the type of housing we're looking to build. And then the climate-controlled self-storage and the drive-up self-storage, and then the last piece there. So that's a total evaluation of over almost $230 million at the completion of this project with annual tax revenues of $7 million. That's annual. And when I said the bond payment is $385,000 a year. So you minus out that $385,000 from that, that's still a lot to cover the expenses of fire, police, road maintenance, and whatever else may come up. So they might even be able to fund some additional sidewalks along Beaver Meadows and expansion in some of the streets and making things more walkable in other areas of the city because there's going to be tax revenue that's generated. So, do we have another one? Thank you. Thank you for sticking with us for this whole time. And we'll stick around as late as we need to, provided that's okay with Councilor Todd.
Good, yeah. I'll just make a couple of quick closing remarks. Let me know more of that.
Oh, sure.
Make I get that on there. But I want to thank, thanks. I want to thank Kevin, Dean, Ed, Ryan, the team for being here tonight. Obviously, there were a lot of questions. And I think we appreciate that you are all here and answered those questions. We're going to make ourselves available for more questions as well. So they'll be here. You can come up, ask your questions. I just wanted to point out, my thanks also to Councilor Kurtz, Councilor Sekou, and Councilor Brown. We're also here tonight for this meeting. And yes, I covered Jeff Foote earlier, but I'll mention Jeff again. Jeff, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I just wanted to say there were some questions asked earlier about the process on this, and there's some references to the fact that this is maybe a done deal and so forth, and that really is far from the case. So one thing that wasn't really mentioned or covered tonight is the fact that in order for this to move forward, as we pointed out, this land is currently zoned as industrial. So the developer would need to go and make a request to have a zoning change. That would need to go before the planning board for their recommendation, and then it would need to go before the city council, which is the only body in the city that can actually make those changes. So that's one thing that would have to happen. Additionally, we heard about environmental. A lot of folks brought up environmental issues. There are lots of permitting and so forth, work that would need to be done in order to make that happen. And also the culvert was mentioned that is being repaired. That is coming up in the city budget this year for design and planning phase. There's $300,000 proposed in the budget for that. That design work would then be completed, and then in next year's budget, there are dollars that are set aside tentatively for the actual construction of it. So that would need to happen first in order for the road to be accessed down to the property where they want to develop. So lots of other stages, lots of other opportunities for folks to come out and ask questions and have input. So just wanted to kind of make that clear to everybody. And again, my thanks to everybody here, and thank you all. Thanks, Concord TV, and we'll have this available for folks and send out the link to the meeting. I think that what we should do is, we didn't really do any kind of a sign-up sheet or anything like that. You do have one. So folks that are here, if they want to do the sign-up sheet and sign on, you'll get additional information directly from the development team. Otherwise, be on the lookout for announcements as you have from your counselors and other folks about future meetings and future information sessions. Thank you all again for coming tonight. Thanks.